You know, despite the fact that we here in the States thinking that we're a massive motorcycle market, we're basically a rounding error on the rest of the world. It probably has something to do with the fact that we only want one thing, and it's disgusting. We want to go real fast on the highway, or real fast on a racetrack, or really fast off-road, and if it's not fast, we usually don't care. That's a bit of an oversimplification, but there's some truth to it. There's a ton of motorcycles that we don't get stateside, whether it's little 125s or even big ADV or touring bikes and everything else in between. So today, in the interest of making a bunch of US riders feel left out, we're gonna take a look at 7 motorcycles that were never sold in the United States. I could fill up this entire list with Hondas because Honda doesn't love us here, but I wanna talk about bikes from other brands too, so I limited to 2 only from the Big Red. Also, there's only one 250cc inline 4 here because, again, I could fill a giant list with those. Some of these bikes will be from manufacturers you've never heard from, and some of them you'll wonder why they never made it here because it seems like a bit of a no-brainer. But fear not, my American friends, you have an opportunity that other people don't, winning our brand new CRF 300L giveaway bike. That's right, we just unveiled this bike, and it could be yours by just clicking the link down below and signing up on yamanoob.co. But if you want to get a nice little head start, head over to shop.yamanoob.co and use the code CRF and you'll get triple entries to win on every dollar you spend. So for those of y'all on the cheap seats, if you drop $10, that'll be 30 entries. I can do you one better though. If you pick up one of our pieces of luggage, it'll max out your entries for this month. So whether you're looking at a tank bag, a tail bag, a ball gag, or any other motorcycle bag, you'll get max entries for the month. Click the link down below and get entered. Now let's start off with one strong that I really wish we had here in the States. It's the Yamaha MT01. This one's a wild bike that was made available from 2005 to 2012, and it was almost sold in the States, but it only made it as far as Canada. Yamaha's US branch declined to import the bike, citing too small of a market for the bike. If I may take a moment to berate people who are probably retired at this point, what the hell were you thinking? Have you ever ridden in America? This bike has a 1670cc air-cooled V-twin, putting down 89 horsepower and 111 foot-pounds of torque. It is the quintessential muscle bike experience. It's a physically gigantic motorcycle with a big tank and a massive twin undertail exhaust. It's basically like a Yamaha Buell, and it revs out in a very similar way. You start off at 1500 RPM and it redlines at 5000, which is way earlier than you'd expect from a sport naked bike. As a result of an engine that didn't really match the rest of the bike, it was reviewed really poorly and not many sold, but the ones you do find are owned by some deeply weird Uber fans who will never let go. If I were the one making all the decisions over Yamaha, and I really should be, by the way, I mean, I've been riding Yamaha since 2015, I basically know everything there is to know, I'm joking by the way, I would revive the MT01, but instead of putting some big lumpy air-cooled V-twin in there, I would put the R1 engine in it, or I would keep everything else the same and I would call it something else like, I don't know, an XSR01 or something like that. That one retire on a big mountain of cash and live on an island somewhere. Seriously, Yamaha, stop making the MT10 so gosh darn ugly. Why do I have to gouge out my eyes every time I want to ride one? That seems counterproductive. Anyways, let's take a quick listen to the MT01. Number 2, it's the Kawasaki ZX25R. Yep, here it is. You knew it was coming when I mentioned 250cc inline 4s. There are so many small bike fetishists out there who seem to think that this is the perfect bike for them. They look online, they see the specs, and see a 249cc inline 4 putting down 50 horsepower, and think to themselves, wow, what a great starter bike. I would love to ride around an inline 4 soundtrack and the super sports style ergonomics. I bet it would make a great street bike. And anyone out there who thought that never looked at the torque. It's making 15 foot-pounds of torque. Oh, and don't get that peak torque until 14,500 RPM. Guys, that is so long to wait. If you've ever ridden a 600 and thought that was slow to leave a stoplight, then hop on a bike that weighs 401 pounds and makes Grom levels of torque throughout the majority of its power band. Oh, but it'll have some horsepower down low to compensate for the lack of torque, right? No, that's not how anything works. Sure, you get 50 horsepower, but it's at 15,500 RPM, and if you thought the R6's dyno chart looked wonky, well, go Google this one. A bike like this is literally only being good at full throttle 100% of the time, and here in the States, that means you need to be on track. So while I see all these small bike weirdos in the comments desperately hoping this makes its way over here, I'm not really holding my breath. Now, a while back, we covered the possibility of a ZX4R getting released in the States, and I could almost see that happening. But once again, it's not going to be a great street bike. But that's not going to stop people from saying it sounds awesome and that they want one, so why don't you take a listen and judge for yourself. Number 3 is one I'm actually super jealous we don't get here stateside, and that's the Honda CB400 Super 4. Honda's been cranking these bikes out since 1992, and they're only available in Japan, Southeast Asia, and Australia, though the Aussies got kicked out of the Super 4 party. Maybe they threw one too many shrimps on the Barbie and Honda said no. Now, why do I think the Super 4 might be a better bike to have around the States than the ZX4R when it's still just a baby 399cc inline 4? Making 55 horsepower and 29 foot-pounds of torque. 2 words, 8 letters, VTEC, baby. That's right, like the VFR and the Civic you wanted in high school, the Honda CB400 has been making this bike with VTEC since 1999. What this does is that it disables 2 valves per cylinders below 6,750 RPM to help improve low down power. Then when you get above, there's a massive change from 2 valves to 4, making it a very unique riding experience. It makes a big difference in the street ability of an inline 4 to have VTEC, and if you haven't heard it in action, take a listen. Did you hear the point when maximum suck was achieved? Another neat thing about the bike is that it's got the classic Hornet styling, which is timeless if you ask me. I've seen a few people say they're going to import these, and while normally I think that'd be completely absurd and a massive waste of money, I could see one making the case for one of these. Now, how about one you've never heard of? The Moto Morini Super Scrambler. It's the Ducati Scrambler you have at home. I'm only half joking. It's packing an 1187cc V-twin that makes 116 horsepower and 80 foot-pounds of torque. As you might have guessed from the name, Moto Morini is an Italian manufacturer, but they've been making bikes since 1937. Like a lot of Italian motorcycle companies, they've had a hard time staying solvent, and they were bought by Cagiva, then Texas Pacific Group, then a company started by the founder's nephew, then they went bankrupt, and now they've restarted production. It's a classic tale from the land of linguini. Will they survive the upcoming Scrambler apocalypse? We'll see. But in the meantime, they're making a bunch of bikes out there on the 1200 platform. They've sourced their frame from Verlici, front forks from Marzocchi, Paoli rear shocks, and Brembo, making this bike about the most Italian motorcycle ever made. Since we've never been able to check one out, I have to trust reviews which claim that the bike is a wheelie monster despite shipping with some road-biased Scrambler tires and actually managed to handle remarkably well in twisties. The only thing that seems to be a question mark with regards to the bike is its reliability. Ever since Moto Morini got started again for the second time, people have been wondering how they'll withstand the test of time. There doesn't seem to be a widespread reports of the bike blowing up, which is a good thing, but only time will tell. Given how small Moto Morini is, it's unlikely we'll see them stateside anytime soon. Let's see what this not Ducati Scrambler sounds like. Number 5 is the Husqvarna Smart Pillin 500. Wait, no, never mind. It's the Brixton Crossfire 500X, but it looks an awful lot like someone was copying Husky's homework on this one. Brixton is a company owned by the KSR Group, which ships bikes from Chinese manufacturers like CF Moto, Benelli, and tangentially related to Royal Enfield. Then I couldn't exactly figure out where exactly the bike was made, but it seems to be an Austrian company, which makes sense given KSR is Austrian, and maybe it also explains why it looks so close to the Svartpillen. The Crossfire 500X has a 486cc parallel twin, making 47 horsepower and 32 foot-pounds of torque. From the light poking around I did on this bike, it seems to come with adjustable KYB forks, J-Huan brakes, and Bosch ABS. Styling-wise, it's a pretty striking motorcycle with a long flat seat, spoked Scrambler-style rims, stainless steel pipes, and a muted gray and silver paint scheme. It seems like a fun beginner bike, and I think it would be worth pretty solid hit here if it made to the States, especially considering how much people love the Svartpillen look. Unfortunately, it's a standard firing order parallel twin, which doesn't sound that great. Take a listen. Who knows if we'll ever get to check one out, but color me interested. Number 6 is one for the fancy boys out there, the Bimota DBX 1100. It's the answer to the question no one asked: what if someone made a supermoto and charged $25,200 for it? Oh wait, Ducati already answered that question. To be honest, as far as bimotos are concerned, this one is super affordable, especially when you put it up against the Tezzy H2. This bike is using the air-cooled Ducati 1100 V-twin from, you guessed it, the old Hyper Motard. It's putting down 95 horsepower and 77 foot-pounds of torque. Having spent a day on the 1100 Hyper, I can tell you it's a handful of bike with a crap ton of torque down low right from idle. But instead of sticking with the standard Supermoto 17-inch rims, they decided to reinvent the wheel, literally, and they slapped a 19-inch front end on it and ship it with street-biased knobbies like it's some sort of coked-out dual sport. Of course, it's got all the bimoto fixings like Öhlins suspension, red, white, and green colors, and some really pretty wild bodywork. Given that it is a bimoto, and bimoto is known for being the bike of choice for rich guys with more money than sense, it's possible you'll find a few of these in the States, but it is unlikely. Last up, our second Honda, the XRE 300. It's bike designed and built by Honda in Brazil. It launched in 2009 and has been running ever since. It's a 291cc air-cooled single, putting down 26 horsepower and 20 foot-pounds of torque, but that's if you run it on gas. You can run ethanol and actually make almost 27 horsepower and 21 foot-pounds of torque. I know, big gains, but in remote locations, being able to run your bike on moonshine is a nice feather in its cap. It's a solid dual sport, tipping the scales at 317 pounds, which is basically the same weight as a DRZ 400, slightly lower 34-inch seat height, and a proper 21 18-inch rim. These are basically built to be bulletproof, last forever, and tackle everything from rough pavement to nasty single track. Its base price is $3,300, which is super affordable, and given the recent explosion in dual sport popularity in the States, I think the XRE 300 would actually be a great choice for beginner off-road riders in America. Pretty sweet little bike. Fact: Frederick Bauer invented the Pringles can. When he passed away in 2008, his ashes were buried in one. Goodbye.
Keep watching Yammy Noob. Keep watching Yammy Noob. Keep watching Yammy Noob. Keep watching Yammy Noob. Keep watching Yammy Noob.